Time appropriate greetings for whenever this episode finds you. Welcome back to our mini series exploring the RHEL 10 beta and everything around it. Today, we're going to talk to some about two community projects that are very close to RHEL and the beta and the community, EPEL and CentOS Stream. So for this episode, I'm Matt Mycini. Behind the camera is Scott doing our production. This episode, joining us on CentOS Connect Eve as part of the FOSDEM Fringe, live from Belgium in no order other than alphabetical. Please welcome Sean, Carl, and Troy, which was actually not in alphabetical order. Gentlemen, thanks for making the time in the evening there to join us. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about who are you, what do you do for your project, and what do you do for fun? Carl, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Howdy, y'all. My name is Carl George. I'm the EPEL team lead inside Red Hat. That is what I'm lucky enough to get to focus on with my working hours. We'll talk more about EPEL and what it stands for and all that later on. For fun, I like been here lately. I've been getting into mechanical keyboards, and that's a lot of fun. I think when I get away from computers, I like to go hunting, deer hunting, bird hunting. I enjoy that.
Right on. Sean, how about you next?
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm the CentOS community architect. So basically, I handle all the non-technical aspects of the community, of the CentOS community, including running this CentOS Connect event that we're preparing for here. For fun, I don't know. I enjoy running. I also I play banjo poorly. And I just got a mandolin with my Red Hat Reward Zone points for my 10-year anniversary. So I hope to someday soon also play the mandolin poorly.
Very nice, very nice. Want to have you back on the instrument episode that we might have to do later, since we've had some. So there's a lot of musical folks inside of Red Hat. And Troy, last but absolutely not least, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, I'm Troy Dawson. I'm on the CentOS Stream team, making CentOS Stream. I'm also the EPEL committee chair, and as Carl says, we'll talk about EPEL a little later. What I do for fun is I love making distributions, which is convenient for my job, but I also am the CentOS Alternative Images committee chair because I like doing that stuff. I also like sewing, designing and sewing my own shirts, such as this one, which they all seem to theme penguins. But yeah, those are some of the things I like doing.
Yes, we get to see a Dawson original penguin shirt, which is always fun. So last week, we talked about community comments. So leave us comments. We will mention them on the show. We do have one this week on our release notes of the week, actually brought to us by an internal Red Hatter, Christoph Dorbeck. One of the things that sharp-eyed Christoph noticed that we forgot to mention on the architecture front, so we won't be building IX86 packages for RHEL 10. So this is going to be a fully 64-bit version of RHEL, which I think is probably the first time we've done that. So on to our content today. So y'all mentioned CentOS Connect. So Scott, why don't you bring up the lovely work of our community members who can show us a little bit about this, the event and what's going on. So so this is a contributor conference. It sort of co-runs with FOSDEM along with some of the other community open source oriented events, like I know Config Management Camp happens around the same time. So what do y'all have planned for the next 2 days for the community? Sean, maybe you want to.
Yeah, sure. So we do Thursday and Friday, which are the 2 days before FOSDEM, and then we all join at FOSDEM. So we do a single track of presentations so that people don't feel like they have to miss out on stuff. But we actually start out on Thursday morning. Tomorrow morning, we have some rooms set aside where we do some meetups. So a lot of our SIGs, the community members are all here anyway. And so we provide some meeting rooms for them where they can meet up and discuss. We've got like a 4-hour block where they can have those meetings. And then after those meetups, after we all have our meetups and then we have lunch, then we kick off our plenary track for our sessions. So Thursday afternoon, we start our sessions, and those are all on the schedule on the website. And then Friday all day is sessions as well. And we do live stream the sessions. We don't live stream the meetups; those are only in person. But as of Thursday afternoon, we start doing the live stream, and then all day Friday. And we try very hard to include our live stream participants, so we relay questions to the speakers, time permitting. So if people want to join remotely, they're welcome to do so.
Cool. Yeah, I think we've got some information here that we can show folks so that they can participate over the next couple of days. And so if they're timely enough to go ahead and pick this up in the next few days and get to see the live streams, which Scott will bring up those links so folks can jot those down where to see the day 1 and day 2 live streams. Post event, Sean, are these going to be available somewhere else so that people can catch up if they don't happen to be, well, neither in Belgium nor happen to catch the live streams?
Yeah. So after the event, we do record it as well. And we chop up the videos, put a little bumper on the front, and we publish them all on our YouTube channel. It's a manual process that I do, and it's easy, but it's a little bit time consuming, right? It's mostly time consuming in my laptop doing the renders. So I start on that as soon as I get home from Belgium on Tuesday, and so over the following week afterwards, they'll start appearing on our YouTube channel.
Awesome. So folks can look out for those. So let's get into a little bit about the projects in particular. So let's start with Carl. Carl, I'm going to ask you about EPEL. So the EPEL 10 release, when is it? When can I have EPEL 10 for my beta systems?
EPEL 10 is already released, actually. And we actually haven't touched on, if anyone's new, what EPEL actually is. So I'll cover that real quick, if you don't mind. EPEL stands for Extra Packages for Enterprise Linux. Some people think I'm saying Apple whenever I say it, but no, it's EPEL. We're not really picky on pronunciations, but the whole idea is the extra packages part. Enterprise Linux is kind of our blanket term for Red Hat Enterprise Linux and also CentOS Stream. And then the extra packages part, we're trying to give, there's only a limited set of packages that will go into there. That's what Red Hat wants to support in the RHEL product. And but maybe you're lucky enough that you can run everything you need to do in production just off of those packages in the operating system. But most people need something more. They're either building on top of it with their own packages. EPEL's a common place where people can collaborate and do the same packages and share the work that everyone else is doing. It's technically part of the Fedora project, but Sean likes to tell me that he has joint custody of EPEL since we do so much work with CentOS. But technically, it's part of Fedora. Uses Fedora infrastructure. We do the builds there. To get a package into EPEL, generally you would put it into Fedora first, and then you would branch it for EPEL, sort of like another Fedora release. But yeah, we just did our EPEL 10 release last month in December. This is the first time we did a pre-release period where we started at Fedora's Flock event last August. We opened it up to packagers to start adding things. And if I remember right, we got up to several thousand. I don't have the exact number in front of me. I do remember 10,000 packages by the time we did the official release announcement, which is many more than what's actually in the base operating system itself. So we were really proud of that and all the contributors that made that possible.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. So this sort of distro adjacent repo project, right? It's kind of common, right? If you're old enough like me, like dog years, like these sort of things go back, right? That the distros make choices, and there's other things that other folks might want to use or bring, but they want to do it in some sort of more non-self-packaged and maintained ways of doing things, right? So tell me a little bit more about like how you go about running a project like that. Like you said, it builds on Fedora's infrastructure and sort of under that Fedora umbrella. So like this is a volunteer sort of community? Like what are we talking about here? Since you said you do, you get paid by Red Hat, but a lot of this is a community effort. So walk me through that a little bit of what
Sure.
that looks like.
So there's not a whole lot of direction provided. A lot of what we try to do on my team at Red Hat is just make sure the infrastructure is available, do long-term planning about how we want to change how it's set up. But a lot as far as like individual packages, like picking what is in each EPEL release, that's just up to the community. Like Troy sitting here with us, he cares a lot about KDE, and he makes sure that KDE is good to go in there. It's not part of CentOS or RHEL, but he makes sure that it works with those. And he cares about KDE, so he gets it in there. There's a few packages that I care about that I make sure are in there, but those aren't really part of our job. That's just things that we know we're going to want to use at some point on that enterprise Linux release, so we make sure they're available. And there's many Fedora packages that are the same way, where they have their set of packages they care about. It's different for everyone, but there's not just one universal set of, here's the content set that defines EPEL. It's just kind of a build it and they will come type thing.
Right on. And so you mentioned packagers, maintainers. For those of us who might not be as familiar with that lingo, what does a maintainer do? What does a packager do for Apple?
So an EPEL packager is a Fedora packager. We maintain the packages that are in Fedora and in EPEL. We make sure that they are kept up to date with the upstream version, like the upstream for the project will release a new version. We'll check the compatibility and make sure that it's appropriate for all the update policies. Sometimes an update may only go into Fedora Rawhide. Sometimes it may be able to go into all current Fedora releases. Sometimes it can go into EPEL releases as well. So we're checking that compatibility between those to see what's appropriate for each of those. We take a look and see if address any bug reports that get filed for it, where a user may report a bug. We'll look and see if that bug is already known about. We'll verify the bug exists, and then we'll go check the upstream project, see if they know about it. If they don't, we either file the bug for them or help the user file the bug and get it in the right place. Or if there's already a fix identified upstream, maybe we backport that into the package before it's released in a new version, or maybe we just need to update to a new version to get that fix. All of that management there and getting that. So very similar work to what the RHEL maintainers do for packages that are in RHEL. We're just doing it kind of amateur volunteer style. I did notice another question.
A lot of work for amateur volunteer style.
There was another question I wanted to address that Scott asked in the chat. Is EPEL similar to Ubuntu's universe? That is a very good analogy. In Ubuntu, they have their is it main, I think, is the main repositories, and then universe is like additional packages that don't have as much of their corporate focus, but they make sure are available. It's very similar with EPEL. The big difference, I would say, is that in Ubuntu, universe is enabled out of the box, and in Red Hat Enterprise Linux and CentOS Stream, you have to go and enable EPEL separately as an opt-in step.
Great. Yeah, I was just about to ask you that. Scott, you want to bring up another question? We put it on a slide just to break up the talking head view. So this one's for you again on the EPEL front. So we get asked, I've personally had this question, you sort of alluded to it. There's a big set of packages out there, but people have questions sometimes about any particular package that they're looking for, right? They want to know, hey, when is something going to be there? I don't see X, Y, Z. What's your advice for regular folk who aren't currently already part of the project, current early maintainers, don't have that sort of muscle? How do they go about understanding, or maybe even recommending that, hey, there's this package, maybe somebody can take a look at it?
Well, we're definitely not mind readers, so the best thing to do is to talk to us. And the official channel for doing that is bug reports. We have a guide that will be linked in the show notes that actually walks people through how to file a bug for an EPEL package to request that it be built. Sometimes the case is that the package is in Fedora and it isn't in any EPEL release yet. Sometimes the case is that it's in EPEL 8, but it's not in EPEL 9 or EPEL 10, and we just need to build it in more places. But yeah, it's just a communication thing that really helps. Troy wants to pipe up here.
I want to address the question that just popped up there. XFCE is a perfect example of this. A lot of people don't know, hey, when is it going to come up? But if they filed a bug report or looked at the bug reports for XFCE, they'd notice that RHEL 10 does not have X11. It only has Wayland. XFCE, the X originally stood for X11. They're porting that to Wayland. It's getting close. And if you follow the bugs, you might be able to see that. So just an example of what happens. There is a team of people that wants XFCE in just as much as you do. But they didn't want to put something in that doesn't work. So filing those bugs not only lets them know that you want it, but allows you to follow it as work is being done on it.
Very good point. And it kind of brings me to another question. So what if somebody has something that they are passionate about, Troy, like you are with KDE, or if somebody who did want to get involved with XFCE and getting that in there, or if they have something that apparently nobody else cares about, right? So is there a way for folks to become part of the project as a maintainer, co-maintainer? Like, how do you get new community members to into the fold? And I'm sure you're looking for folks on the regular.
I'll answer this one, but I might pass it to Carl because I know he's answered this one several times, but I'll give it my best shot. The first thing is, as Carl says, we are Fedora packagers, and you need to go through the Fedora infrastructure. If you're already a Fedora packager for whatever reason, then it's very simple. You take your package and you get the dependencies into EPEL and you build it for EPEL and maintain it as you would a Fedora package. If you're not, there is guidelines for becoming a Fedora packager, and you'll need a sponsor. And usually I'm going to say 95% of the times you bring that package into Fedora and then into EPEL. It's much easier to maintain and that way, and that gives you the Fedora sponsorship. Usually makes that much easier. There is exceptions to that, but for vast majority of people, that's the way to go. Anything to add, Carl?
I think that covers it pretty well. And we'll have a link in the show notes about the process for joining the becoming a Fedora packager. The title is Joining the Package Maintainers.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, we'll make sure we've got not only are we showing these links, but they will be available in the show description. We'll update that with all the links that we've provided today once we're out of here. So I think that is actually a good segue, right? Since we're talking about the relationship of these different packages and where they come from and the sort of distro projects that go along with it. Sean, I want to ask you a question first. So is it CentOS? Like, what's the official pronunciation? I know Carl's not so worried about Apple, but how do we say the project that comes before Stream?
I'm trying to think of what I actually always say. I'm running CentOS Connect, so I guess I always say CentOS. I always joke. I got my start in open source on the GNOME project or the GNOME project. So I always joke that I only get involved with projects with ambiguous pronunciation. I say CentOS most of the time, but I think nobody is very picky about the pronunciation.
Yeah, no, I hear pretty much everything out there. I think mostly I am also team CentOS, but it's just one of those things that things that come up a lot. How do we really say it? What's going on? So CentOS Stream, first off. So CentOS Stream 10, that was released. Has that been released yet? What does that mean from the perspective of a Stream user?
Do you want me to get that one, Sean, or you got that one?
Go ahead, Troy.
First off, yes, it was released. It was released at the same time as EPEL. That was actually a coordinated things with Carl, Sean, and Adam, who's the team lead of CentOS Stream. And that was December. I'll put it there. I can't remember the date. Now I got to remember can you repeat the second half of the question?
Yeah, no worries. So CentOS Stream 10 comes out Stream 9 Lifecycle. So, like, how many streams are there? What does that look like from a user perspective when they're trying to figure out which stream they should be using and following?
Often depends on the use case. There is just 2 streams, and there usually will only be 2 streams. CentOS Stream 8 has been retired. CentOS Stream 9 is active. CentOS Stream 10 is active. It depends on your use case. If you are a RHEL 9 or RHEL 10, or looking at RHEL 10 customer, you should probably use and test the corresponding CentOS stream. That's going to give you your preview. But a lot of people like to use it as a base thing. We see in the numbers that majority of them are testing, but there's also quite a few people that use it all the time. And this can be personal preference. So these two might contradict me, and that would be okay. It is when you feel comfortable using it. If you are somebody I've got to have the latest thing, CentOS Stream 10 is really what you should do. If you want something much more stable, do CentOS Stream 9. And with that, I'm going to be quiet so the other two can contradict me.
No, I'm not contradicting you at all. I agree. I think whether CentOS Stream 10 is useful for you right now, it depends on your tolerance for change. Things could still change because it basically corresponds in package set to what's in the RHEL 10 beta. Of course, things are hitting Stream 10 before they're hitting more composers of RHEL. But to the extent that RHEL 10 could change between beta and GA, CentOS Stream 10 could also change. And so if you're okay with that level of change in your usage, then I think it's really solid. I've used it, and RHEL 10's beta, RHEL's betas in general are really solid systems, but change could happen. It's also really nice for us to have that release fairly early, because we have a lot of CentOS special interest groups, our SIGs, and they do a lot of work building on top of CentOS Stream. And so it's important to them that they can have that base, that they can really start building all of their packages, start building them early so that they're ready for them whenever they do transition later.
Great. So you've
I can jump in on that one a little bit too as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
From the EPEL angle, I'll mention that we talked about certain content being available. EPEL 10 we launched with the most content we ever had before, like 10,000 packages. It's up to like 11,000 now. But EPEL 9's been going on for 3 years already, or 3.5 years, and it's got like 20,000 packages. So if all of the things that you need for additional packages are in EPEL 9, then CentOS Stream 9 is a lot better choice for you. And maybe you wait a little while to try out CentOS Stream 10 until all the things that you do want from EPEL are there as well. Maybe file requests for those so we know.
There you go. There you go. Tie it all off. All right. So I've got 3 questions that you've all set up very perfectly. So I'm going to pick one at random and we're going to go from there. First, let's talk about SIGs, special interest groups, because I know that's a big part of CentOS Stream and what CentOS Stream is about, right? So just for context, I was around when we launched CentOS Stream right off the bat, and then I sort of did something else internally here at Red Hat and stopped paying attention until probably about I don't know, whenever I saw y'all in late fall of last year. So tell me a little bit about sort of the goals, not just of Stream generally, but like what are the special interest groups that y'all are fostering, and how do those work, since that's a big part of what goes on in the community?
Sure. The SIGs are actually a really good opportunity for people to get involved and to shape things the way they want them. So CentOS Stream itself, the community is welcome to come file issues and make patches. It's completely open. But maintainership of it, ultimately comes down to the RHEL maintainers, because it is the packages are the only updates that go into CentOS Stream itself are bound for RHEL. So if you want to do something that's a little bit different, if you want packages that aren't in RHEL, or if you want updated versions, that's work that we can take in and do within our special interest groups. So we have a cloud SIG that does OKD and OpenStack packaging work, a storage SIG that packages up some storage systems. Troy is actually the chair of the Alt Images SIG, which produces some alternative images of CentOS Stream and CentOS with some SIG work. One of our most active community SIGs is the Hyperscale SIG. And this is, they actually package updated versions of systemd and the kernel. So they're using the base set of packages within CentOS Stream with some updates that you wouldn't get within just kind of base CentOS Stream. So, there's a lot of exciting work that happens within the SIGs, and the communities can, within the SIGs, kind of shape CentOS into something a little bit different than what Stream provides.
Excellent. Yeah, so I know that there's a lot of work that goes on in those groups, and they are very important to what y'all are doing. So if somebody does have, say, I know maybe the hyperscaler one's a little bit niche, right? Because some of the things that are going on in there, right? Like if you're not running, like you could, anyone can sit down over a weekend and code a Python app that looks and feels like some sort of open social media platform that currently exists today, but running it at scale, like that's a totally different set of problems that most people don't have until you're trying to run like 30,000 unique systems that are doing that together. And that's where a lot of those folks, operate to solve problems there. But generally, say, how would somebody get involved in a particular SIG, and where do they go? Sort of like with the EPEL project, like how do you get involved in a SIG or in a community to help drive one of those use cases that you're particularly interested in? Yeah.
If you go to the CentOS site, and thank you, Sean, and all those that worked on we have a brand new site. If you go to the SIGs, each SIG itself has its own governance and own way to join it. Usually they're very simple. Like I'm going to take my alternative images. If you show up at our SIG meetings for a couple of meetings and say, hey, I want to be part of the SIG, or I want to do X or Y, we have a number of us that have to say, okay, and then you're part of the SIG. A lot of it is that simple, but there's also the parts that say, if you aren't active for 6 months, we'll take you out of the SIG. Not as being mean, but we don't want a bunch of inactive. But each SIG is different. The new website, it's at least for me, it's been very simple to find the different list of SIGs and go to their page. They should say on that page how to join the SIG. And there is also a page on governance on how to start your own SIG. If you find that you're not going to do one, you want to do Raspberry Pi 5 display, something like that, and you make it a SIG. You can do that, but there is steps that you need to do. And again, it's at the CentOS, not CentOS.org website.
Yeah, and I would generally recommend people, you come in with an interest and you want something packaged or you want something different, right? And so you can just peruse the SIGs and see, is there one of them that's working in an area you're already interested in, where you could do that work? If there's not, you can start a SIG. There's a little bit of a barrier to entry there because we don't want to just, throw SIGs up that nobody's going to be interested in 6 months. But also, if there's packaging work that you want, sometimes a SIG is not the right answer. A lot of times it can be, but if it's just if it's something that's just in Fedora and not in CentOS, then it might just be that EPEL is the right place for it, right? So EPEL can take anything that is in Fedora and not CentOS, as long as it doesn't conflict with something in CentOS. So, for example, I'm interested in, I wanted to get OBS, the streaming software, in because I'm going to use it for the next 2 days for the streaming. And like EPEL is the place for that. I unfortunately did not manage to get it into EPEL in time, so I am streaming from my Fedora system, but I'm happy to do that too. But a lot of the packaging work you might be interested in doing could just happen in EPEL, and I consider EPEL contributions to be CentOS contributions anyway. But other than that, you find the SIG that's doing the kind of work that you're interested in, and talk to them.
Great. And I think, Carl, you may not answer this in chat, but because I spent 3 months and nearly got kicked out of a Fedora SIG lurking on the old Fedora Meetings IRC channel. Have y'all also made the jump to Matrix, just like the rest of the Fedora project did? Is that where y'all are holding meetings these days?
Yes. Yes. As far as I know, all of the Fedora meetings have moved over from IRC. I believe most or all of the CentOS ones have too, right, Sean?
I'm fairly certain all of them have. I actually emailed all the SIGs a couple of months ago and told them that if they have not yet done that, that they should strongly consider doing that. So,
cool. So if anyone out there is considering joining a SIG, make sure you pay attention, unlike me, to when and where those meetings have moved, so you don't sit in an empty meeting room wondering why you're not getting any action items or anyone trying to ask you questions about things. Luckily, the Cloud Infrastructure SIG is a very laid-back group of people, so it was very easy to reactivate myself once I actually figured out I needed to open Matrix and not IRC. So one sort of more personal, functional question about sort of the life cycle of CentOS Stream and how it comes together. So I'll be honest, when we first chatted, I had thought that we had Stream 10 back in June. And part of that was because there is a difference between, well, I'll let you explain it for real, but the artifacts that get produced throughout the timeline of the road to RHEL 10 totally, right? So starting from packages in Fedora through CentOS Stream into RHEL 10 beta, and then finally into RHEL 10. So we have these things like they call it composes. That was what Adam was actually announcing in June. So walk me through a little bit of the sort of functional pathways, and we don't have to get too deep. We actually have another special guest, one of the Fedora ambassadors, is going to come on later in the episode in the series to actually walk sort of how do you track something specifically from Fedora all the way through, so you don't get surprised by anything that's coming in RHEL, because it's really hard to do that. But clarify for everyone else what my mistake was about watching what's going on with the Stream community and knowing what and how to use the different parts and milestones that show up.
Why don't I answer that, and then I'm going to have to drop off after. I'll answer as much as I can, then I'll pass it off to Sean. There is a workflow, and if you watch my talk tomorrow, I go into it in more detail. It starts with Fedora. It goes into ELN. If you look into Fedora ELN, that has the main packages. And then every 3 years, those gets pulled into CentOS Stream. In this case, it got pulled into CentOS Stream 10. There's a bootstrap phase where those keep in sync with Fedora. And then when we break that, it goes into sort of the build phase, which is probably where you saw in June. We're the maintainers are cleaning up the packages, saying we want this, we don't want that. This one needs this parameters. And CentOS Stream and RHEL infrastructure are busy making composes, as we call them. But a compose has several levels. There's just the RPMs in a DNF repo, but then there's the images and the various images that happens. The cutover was in February. In June was when we first had our first images. They were not a release at that point. They were not stable. We released them at random times whenever I pushed the button or Adam pushed the button to say, I want to test these, I want to test those. It wasn't until we had the release date, we had everything automated. They're going out at a weekly cadence, usually. So at that point, there was that time that you saw in between that was controlled chaos. And we didn't want to recommend anybody actually using it, but you could use it. As Sean, I think, eloquently said, it depends on your capacity for change. If you are okay with, oh goodness, this was so bad, I have to completely reinstall my system, great, use it. But if you wanted something more stable, that was not the time to be doing it. And when we hit release for CentOS, is, as we see right now, we've released it in December, is not the same as when RHEL is released. But it did correspond closely to beta because at that point it was much more stable. With that, I do need to go, so I'll let Sean answer any more that I might have missed.
Absolutely. We appreciate your time today, Troy. Thank you very much. Sean, anything to add on that process front?
It was well covered. I would just say we in terms of our timing on it, there were a number of factors. Part of it was, listening to the engineering on when they think it's not going to change, when they're not expecting a mass rebuild to happen anymore or something like that. But there were other factors. As we said, we released it at the same time as EPEL. So when was EPEL ready to make that announcement? And also we did our website redo basically, and we wanted that to be completely ready. So we weren't pointing people to a kind of stale old website. So there was just all these kind of different factors, and it's like, when are all of these things ready for us to make that final release announcement?
We don't have audio.
So Matt has clearly been expounding and giving us crazy amounts of insightful content, but on mute. So we didn't.
Yes. So ELN, for those who haven't heard, because this was new to me, this is a new Fedora space, Enterprise Linux Next, which feeds a little more directly into Stream and the things that come downstream of Fedora. But there's a question in chat about the distances between sort of Fedora and CentOS Stream, and why there's a Fedora version and a Stream version, and are those closely related? Are they consolidatable? So tell me a little bit concisely about where those two things fit in sort of an overall life cycle.
You want to take that one, Sean?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the general idea with Fedora is that it focuses on innovation. It has a shorter life cycle and kind of a rapid release schedule. There's a new release of Fedora, a new major version every 6 months, and then it has each of those versions is maintained for just over a year, about 13 months, or rather, more specifically, a month after the next release. So 6 month cadence, and then a 13-month duration. About CentOS Stream, on the other hand, that has a 3-year cadence. Every 3 years, we're doing a new major version of that, which is the bring up for the new RHEL major version, like we're ramping up for RHEL 10 now with CentOS Stream 10. CentOS Stream doesn't have minor versions. RHEL does. RHEL has minor versions every 6 months, but CentOS Stream, it focuses on just that major version branch. and then it comes out every 3 years, and then it's maintained for a duration of a little over 5 years. The first 5 years of the RHEL life cycle is called the full support phase, and we have that plus about 5 or 6 months before that when we when we released CentOS Stream 10 last month. So just the life cycles are different. There's not really any. CentOS Stream is based on Fedora, so there's not really a way to combine it because of the different durations and the different focus of the distributions. ELN, like you mentioned, this sort of not really a distro on its own. It is kind of an ongoing rebuild of Fedora's Rawhide branch, and it's kind of the way I heard it phrased one time that I liked was it is a look at what if we branch the next version of CentOS and RHEL from Fedora today. And it just is answering that question continuously to make sure we're prepared to do that and are ready for any surprises that might come along the way, like, oh, these two libraries don't work together. We got to make sure that we pick the right set that works together when we do the branching, or fix this bug in Rawhide so then it gets into ELN and it's already fixed for us and we don't have to fix it later after we branch.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think that's the difference between the projects and what they deliver. From a community standpoint, we work very closely with the Fedora community, and increasingly we share a whole lot of resources. So what we make is different, but we work very closely together to make those things.
Yeah, I think the idea that it's the goals of the projects that are sort of fundamentally different, right? Like Carl said, right? The Fedora is focused on sort of that current innovation. Stream is focused on something that's a little more stable over a longer period of time, and looking to have a little bit more, a little bit different of a life cycle, a little bit longer of a life cycle for different sorts of use cases, which, and again, I think we go back to the idea of the SIGs, right? Like folks who are participating, doing the sorts of things that show up in the CentOS Stream SIGs are not the same folks who show up in the Fedora SIGs. Although, of course, now that Troy's gone, KDE, those sorts of things, sure. those groups are sort of paralleling each other, but you can see it in sort of the structure of what special interests show up in each community now, as to sort of what those communities are doing and what the projects are putting out there. So yeah, I don't think there's any thoughts or any fears of one taking over the other and driving different directions. I think there is one more question, and this one it came from one of our social media channels, and I've got a slide, Scott, if you want to bring that up, that I think dovetails into this conversation, but sort of at the downstream end, right? And of course, we have our faces right over the question. So on one of our social media posts, we got a question from somebody who responded saying, "This is great, RHEL 10 beta, but isn't that what CentOS is for?" So this is sort of the opposite end of the question here. CentOS Stream is, right, and we do say it's a great place to see what is coming in RHEL, right, and to partner with Red Hat, to partner with the community, to sort of, if you need to do that sort of testing, if you want to have that sort of access to see what the next version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux is going to look like, we invite you to take a look at Stream, right? From a Red Hat perspective, not a community perspective. Like, that's one of the things we talk about Stream. But beta is different, right? And Sean, you touched on this a little bit, so I'm going to throw this to you first. So maybe you can help answer this question for folks. Like, what is the sort of difference, right? We released a few weeks apart. What's the difference between a RHEL 10 beta and the CentOS Stream 10 from your perspective?
I kind of wish Troy was still here for this question, actually. From my perspective, I actually think CentOS Stream is an excellent testing ground for RHEL in general. But I do think that the beta gives a very specific snapshot on what the RHEL developers would like you to be testing against. It is not always the case that a RHEL minor version is not necessarily an exact snapshot of CentOS Stream. There could be cases where something goes into CentOS Stream and the RHEL developers decide that even though it was there before a particular RHEL minor version, that they want to bump that to the next minor. So in some circumstances, there could be stuff coming into CentOS Stream that's not going to be in the next minor version. In this case, would be the 0.0, the GA. So there could be stuff in CentOS Stream 10 right now that maybe isn't in 0.0 GA. I think it's a little early that would happen, but the 10 beta definitely is a specific set of stuff that the RHEL developers would like you to be testing against. But I also think that Stream 10 is an excellent choice for testing a lot of upcoming RHEL workloads.
I can add on to that a little bit.
This is probably what Troy would have answered too if he were here. So let me channel my inner Troy. We like to think of, CentOS Stream is serving as the major version branch. And if you looked at it like in June when we first started getting the composes done, it would look very rough, like pre-beta quality. If you look at it now, it looks like RHEL 10.0 GA quality. Then that's two very different milestones with that, because it's just a major version branch as things shape up, and we pick a certain point where we say this is generally ready for general usage, and we do the CentOS Stream 10 launch announcement, which was last month. The RHEL 10 beta, it actually functions like a RHEL minor version before .0. So sort of like RHEL 10.-1 in a way. So it's kind of the trial run of creating minor versions off of that major version branch. And that's from a very in the weeds technical perspective, how I like to think of it. It might not be the best analogy for everyone, but it makes sense in my head.
No, I think that makes sense. I think the other thing, and this was pointed out, I think in the last stream by one of our live viewers, that they noticed that the kernel version in Stream had already moved from 6.11, I think is what was in the beta. That had already moved in Stream to 6.12. And I think, now beta we don't typically update beta very frequently during the process, and it's not usually all the packages. That we may have actually seen that update show up in the beta repos, but those are the sorts of other things too, right? Beta is sort of like you said, it's point in time with a few things that will change over time. But while Stream is released in its GA, it's not static at that point in time, right? We're still advancing it and moving the project and the release forward from there on out. Cool. Okay. Well, I think that answers the prepared section of our stream. We're getting close to the top, so we'll go ahead and throw it to producer Scott to see if there's any unanswered questions in the chat that we want to go ahead and take live here. Oh, that's an interesting one. I think that's for Carl. Extra flat packs for enterprise Linux. What are your thoughts there?
So as of today, EPEL is just RPM packages. This comes up every now and then. People ask when we're going to offer other types of artifacts. Nobody on the EPEL steering committee at this point has any interest in that. It started as RPM packages, and it's right there in the name of extra packages, not extra flat packs, like the EPEL made up description there, acronym. In general, if flat packs are what you're looking for, I don't think there's any reason not to just point people at FlatHub. That is generally the use case people want. When people look for a flat pack, they're wanting something that's the absolute latest version from the developers usually, and they're publishing those on FlatHub. So if that's the kind of thing that you're looking for a containerized app, then FlatHub's probably the right place to get it from. If you're looking for a native system package that is a lighter weight install that shares system libraries, that integrates tighter with the operating system, then EPEL is the right place to either look for that or request that.
Excellent. Scott is telling me to look for a ButterFS question. So the question was, will Red Hat Enterprise Linux ever support ButterFS again? So technically, RHEL never actually supported Btrfs. It never made it out of tech preview. However, Btrfs is part of the Fedora distro. Right? It's the default in the workstation. I know I use it in the other room. So things like that are part of the reasons why, and part of the differences between some of the upstreams and then some of the things that get made through choices into the downstream. And I think that's where something like ELN might come into play, right? Like we're making alternate choices from what the community did in order to say, oh, like if we experiment with, I think the ISA architecture levels, right? Like those were experiments that happened in Fedora ELN and in Stream, because those are things that the community isn't necessarily looking to limit that sort of hardware support. So highly unlikely that we will see Btrfs in RHEL.
I just wanted to add, we have in our CentOS SIGs Btrfs work that happens actually in two separate, I'm not sure about 10, but I know with 9 at least. The Hyperscale SIG, as I mentioned, has their own kernel, and they actually include Btrfs by default. And there's a KMod SIG that produces kernel modules, and they include a Btrfs kernel module. I am not going to tell you what to do to your RHEL systems because I am not your RHEL rep. I would probably not recommend swapping out the kernel with the Hyperscale kernel, but the kernel module from the KMod SIG might work very well for you if you wanted to try Btrfs.
Yeah, well, and there's another great use case, right? So, and another, I think, highlight of how this all works, right? CentOS Stream. Now, if you really need Btrfs, there is a community group that is working on it, and you can use an enterprise Linux that has Btrfs, and if that's what you need, then what you and you got it, right? And you could, if you want to work on it, you can help join that SIG and do that work for you.
And I would add on to that also, if you are a RHEL customer and you want to use a Btrfs in the, have it enabled in the base distribution, file support cases and ask for it. Red Hat likes to listen to their customers, and a lot of the choices that are made in the distribution are direct results from what the customer feedback is saying. So if enough customers are asking for Btrfs, then that could, change what happens in the future. If nobody's asking for it, it probably won't ever change.
Indeed. All right. Well, gentlemen, when is RHEL 10 going to be live? So we don't want to give out exact dates, right? Because the software and exact dates are nothing but trouble. But you can do the math. So RHEL 10 beta came out in roughly late November. We're on a roughly 6-month cycle, so you should probably see that GAing sometime in the spring, but you can get your hands on the beta today through everybody who has a Red Hat account has access to beta. If you want to try out CentOS Stream 10, you can go to the community website, download CentOS Stream 10. It's prominently displayed there. We also have a Scott brought it up. We have a sandbox on the lab.redhat.com. So if you don't have infrastructure, you just want to kick the tires a little bit, you can go there into the build section as we organize it, and you can pull up a beta sandbox and kick the tires there. And again, there's other ways we distribute it as UPI, bootc images, right? So it's available, image builder, do all the things. You can get your hands on the beta today. And with that, I think we are eating well into y'all's evening, and we're coming up at the top of the hour. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap here. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Sean, Carl, I appreciate you joining us on CentOS Connect Eve, day before your big community. Thank you again to Troy for joining us. Give us his regards when you see him tomorrow. Appreciate his time. So for those of us who joined today live, thank you very much for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe. Hit that bell so you'll know when we come back, because this is a relatively weekly episode series. Next episode is going to be We're going to talk about some of the other things that are changing in and around the RHEL ecosystem. We're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, subscriptions. Red Hat owner Rich Jarito is going to be coming in. He knows all the things about, he's probably forgotten more about subscriptions than most people at Red Hat know. So we're going to talk a little bit about how things are changing with how you get access. We'll talk a little bit about this new beta subscription, because that is actually some things folks don't necessarily know about. Yeah, and like I said, leave us comments. What did you find in the release notes? What are you looking for? What are you looking forward to? We will bring up another one of those next time live. And until then, on behalf of myself, producer Scott, Sean, Carl, Troy, and all the rest of us here at the Red Hat Enterprise Linux team, thank you very much for joining us, and see you next time.